Hello, class. My name is Nayeli Rios, and today I'm going to be talking to you about early civilization and the ancient world. There are many different cultures and countries that came together to create what we now know as early civilization. Civilization is very important, and without it, our lives today would be very different. There's a quote by William Durant that says, "Civilization begins with order, grows with liberty, and dies with chaos." The first humans came from river valleys of Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, and China. Our early ancestors used stone and bone tools and weapons to hunt and do what they needed to survive. They left signs and symbols in caves, which help us better understand what life was like for them, and because of this, we have what we know as culture. The three prehistoric cultures from this time are the Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic. Paleolithic culture. The main event of Paleolithic culture was the creation of tools and weapons. This represents the beginning of that culture. The making of tools, which was humankind's earliest technology, was their way of extending control over nature. While tool making was very important during this time, so were cave paintings. Paleolithic cave paintings reveal to us animals that are now extinct. However, the purpose of these paintings were not for entertainment or decoration. They were used for their communal well-being. Some people believe the art was used for a virtual hunting ritual. Others believe they are symbols of male and female forces, or they were used as calendars. After the Ice Age, communities began to farm and produce food instead of hunting and gathering. This transitional period was known as Mesolithic. After this, a new culture emerged. Neolithic. Humans went from the hunting-gathering phase to the agricultural herding phase. They went from a nomadic lifestyle to a sedentary or less physical lifestyle. The start of civilization represents the change from rural to urban culture. What is a civilization, you may ask? It's a society known for creating excess agriculture. It allows specialized labor, social hierarchies, and the establishment of cities. It started in Sumer, Mesopotamia, and along the Nile River. They were close to a river which had its advantages, one being they had water to provide for fields, and the other transportation. They were involved in lots of trading, and soon enough the growth of the urban economy was enhanced. However, a problem occurred. They needed an efficient system of accounting and record keeping. They later invented writing, which evolved from counting. Cuneiform was the name of the writing they used. This was important because not only did it help with their problem of accounting and record keeping, but it also offered a new method for maintaining law and order. One of the first legal codes being the Code of Hammurabi from Babylon, written around 1760 BCE. Mesopotamia, also known as land between the rivers. Home of the earliest civilization, bronze technology, the first wheeled vehicles, and the cuneiform script, which was used for the first written records. Due to labor, they began having social classes, with different training and levels of authority. The people of Sumer were disunited and rivalrous. This made it easier to invade. Around 2350 BCE, a warrior named Sargon took over and united Sumer, but this did not last long. A new group of invaders attacked, dominated, and built a new civilization. The people of Mesopotamia believed in animism, which basically means they believed in nature. For example, the sun, wind, and rain were seen as alive, inhabited by living spirits. Ziggurats were the spiritual centers for the Mesopotamians, serving as both a shrine and temple. Mesopotamia also produced the world's first literary epic, the Epic of Gilgamesh. An epic is a poem that talks about the works of a hero. It is also the first literary work that comes to terms with death. It was recited orally for centuries before being written down in Sumer. In 12,000 BCE, iron technology was introduced. It was cheaper to produce and more durable than bronze, so it became very popular. It also helped increase agricultural production, which also increased the population. Civilization in Egypt began along the banks of the Nile River. They had successful agricultural villages. Because they were surrounded by sea and desert, it made it harder for them to be invaded, which made Egypt very stable. In the Egyptian theocracy, the pharaoh represents heaven's will on earth. They believed in the sun god and believed the pharaoh was the living representative of the sun god. They believed that when the pharaoh dies, he will join the sun to govern Egypt. They had a 10-week embalming procedure. Pyramids were built for religious purposes. Egyptians were one of the first civilizations to believe in an afterlife. Egyptian art was used to show the world to the dead and the lands they continued to protect. Their art included realistic features and were usually portraits of their political or religious leaders. Ancient India. The Indus Valley Civilization is India's earliest known civilization. India's first cities were planned communities. They believed in Hinduism, which is the most ancient of today's world religions. It is significantly different than the religions of the West. They believe in Brahman, who, unlike the deities of the Egypt and Mesopotamia, Brahman is infinite, formless, and unknowable. Ancient China. The mandate of heaven is the sacred right to rule. The most powerful spirits of ancient China were those of deceased ancestors. According to the Chinese, these spirits continue to exist in heaven. Unlike Egypt and Mesopotamia, China left no mythological tales or epics. The oldest text is the Book of Changes, which is a directory for interpreting the operations of the universe. The ancient China also practiced Taoism, which is the philosophy of the way. They sought tranquility, spontaneity, compassion, and spiritual insight. The visual arts were also very significant during early civilization in the ancient world. On the top left, we have the Venus of Willendorf. Her role as a childbearer assures humankind will continue. Because survival was so fragile during this time, she was very important. She was seen as the life giver and was exalted as Mother Earth. We know she was important in the ancient world because of the various female statuettes uncovered by archaeologists throughout the world. On the top right, we have the Queen of Nefertiti. It is the most famous icon in the history of Egyptian art. Her conical crown and swan-like neck represent her elegance. On the bottom right is the bearded man from Mohenjo-Daro from the Indus Valley. He has a soul-searching expression which anticipates the meditative images of India's later religious art. And finally, on the bottom left is the Shang ceremonial vessel, which was a symbol of power commanding respect. They were made using ceramic piece molds, built around a clay model. The molds were imprinted with designs from the model. Then the model was cut or carved down so that the bronze could be poured into the empty space between the model and the molds. Each piece was unique because the ceramic piece molds had to be broken to release the bronze inside. The bronzes were used in rituals conducted by the ruling elite. They were designed to hold food and drink for the dead. The Bronze Age civilization. Metal began to replace stone and bone. Metalsmiths mined and smelted a variety of ores to make bronze, which was much better than stone and bone. Travel and trade were essential to Bronze Age cultures since copper and tin ores were located far apart. The technology of bronze casting required a high degree of specialization, spread throughout the ancient world and Mesopotamia. Soon after the Bronze Age came the Greek Dark Ages. The Bronze Age collapsed, no primary text survived, and only scant archaeological evidence remains. Mycenaean is the term applied to the art and culture from Greece. They established themselves in the Aegean by 16,000 BCE. During this period, the Mycenaeans were very successful and enjoyed their prosperity. Local workshops produced objects of pottery and bronze. Besides being bold traders, they were also fierce warriors. By the late 13th century BCE, mainland Greece had a wave of destruction and the decline of the Mycenaean sites, causing the withdrawal to protect settlements. What does this have to do with the people in our time? Without civilization, life as we know it would be so different. Our people would still be hunting or living in huts, and it wouldn't be much different than how it was back then. The start of civilization created cities, trade, and brought us from a nomadic way of life to a less physical, sedentary way of life. Thank you.